Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Today, we're looking at a singing trio. Truly, but not one you expect. We're looking at three fascinating animals that you might think have nothing to do with each other and even less to do with humans. Hey, look, we've got some real surprises for you. So hang on to your hats. Let's start with what it is we're talking about. We're talking about crows and ravens and wolves. Yes, sir, buddy. Let's start with the similarities and differences between crows and ravens.
Crows and ravens are both members of the Corvidae family, which includes some of the most intelligent birds on the planet. While they share many similarities, they also have strong differences that set them apart. Here is an overview of their relationship, similarities, and differences. Crows and ravens belong to the same genus, Corvus, making them closely related. They share a common ancestor and many behavioral traits due to their evolutionary proximity. This close relationship is evident in their intelligence, their problem solving abilities, and their adaptability to different
Hey,
environments.
what are we talking about? Intelligence. Let's take a look at that. Both crows and ravens are known for their remarkable cognitive abilities. They can use tools. I'm not kidding. They truly can. They can solve very complex problems. They can recognize human faces and even plan for the future. These birds are highly social. Crows often gather in large groups called murders, while ravens tend to form smaller, tighter bonds, but are still very interactive, especially during play. Vocalization skills is another similarity. Both crows and ravens have complex vocalizations and can mimic sounds, including human speech. I've witnessed that, and it's really, it's kind of stunning. I'll say some more about that in a minute. They also have an omnivorous diet. They both, crows and ravens, eat a wide variety of foods, including insects, small animals, fruits, seeds, and human food waste. They are opportunistic feeders. When you first look at them, at first glance, both birds are black and have with glossy feathers, making them difficult to casual observers to distinguish. Can you say more about that, Dr. Deneen?
Certainly. One way of distinguishing them is through size. Ravens are generally larger than crows. A raven can be up to 27 inches long, with a wingspan of about between 45 and 51 inches, while a crow is about 17 inches long, with a wingspan of around 36 inches. In flight, a crow's tail appears fan shaped, while a raven's tail is diamond or wedge shaped. Their vocalizations are a little different. Crows have the standard sharp caw, caw, caw. Sounds like something from hee haw. While ravens have a deeper, throatier croak. Ravens can also produce a wide variety of sounds, including knocks and gurgle.
Gotta say that caw caw that they do doesn't sound anything like anything I ever heard on the very few occasions that I watched hee haw.
Well, there was a joke period that would begin and end with a call, but that's just me. Ravens have a different flight pattern. They soar more often and with less flapping than crows. They are more acrobatic in the air, performing rolls and dives. That sounds like barnstorming.
Mm-hmm.
Their habitat preferences are different. Crows are more likely to be found in urban areas, while ravens prefer wilder, more remote locations, including forests, mountains, and deserts. Crows tend to also live in larger social groups, while ravens are often seen in pairs or small family units, especially during breeding season. As we said, a group of crows is called a murder of crows. What an ominous name. But have you ever wondered how they got that name? The term dates back to medieval times when poetic and often superstitious names were given to animal groups. Ravens, associated with death and the supernatural, in folklore are also sometimes referred to as a murder of ravens, although they are more correctly styled as a flock. Crows and ravens are not just birds, as we said. They're some of the Earth's most intelligent non human animals. Their brain to body ratio rivals that of the apes, and they've consistently amazed scientists with their problem solving skills, ability to use tools, communication complexity, and interactions with humans. One of the most remarkable abilities shared by both crows and ravens is their use of tools. While tool use is rare in the animal kingdom, members of the Corvus genus often regularly engage in behaviors that seem almost human. The New Caledonian crows, in particular, are known to fashion tools out of twigs, leaves, and even their own feathers. That's a surprise. They use these tools to poke into crevices and extract insects or larvae. Crows have been observed bending wires into hooks to retrieve food from narrow containers, which is a sign not just of tool use, but tool modification, which reflects advanced problem solving. Would that be concrete operational thought?
Well, it depends, but yes, it probably is concrete, operational.
What intrigues me also is that ravens, too, have shown tool use in controlled studies using strings and sticks to retrieve hidden food. Crows are known for forming complex relationship with humans, especially those who regularly feed them. These relationships often go beyond mere food exchanges. You said something about this, Dr. Weaver. In many cases, wild crows have been documented bringing small gifts, shiny items, earrings, bits of plastic, paper clips, coins to people who are treating them kindly.
I had something to say about that. It actually happened to me where I live now. It's a complex of cabins, and there's two murders of crows in this area. And it kind of happened by chance that I started feeding these crows. They got to the point where not only did they bring me little gifts, but they would hop along on the ground when I was out walking, or they would fly around to me, and they would after I had formed some relationship with them, they would go, "Hi, hi, hi, hi."
Wow. So they were following you.
Yeah, and they were talking to me too. They said, because I said hi to them all the time. I would say hi, and they learned, and they would go, "Hi, hi, hi."
That is awe inspiring.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the best things about being here.
I could imagine. Now, as we said, these gifts are not may not be thank you gestures in a human sense, but they do suggest that crows associate positive experiences with certain individuals and may bring items in return as part of their ongoing social interactions. Crows can recognize individual human faces and remember them for years. This was demonstrated dramatically in the famous Reagan mask experiment. This is a famous 2006 study at the University of Washington. Researchers tested whether crows could remember humans that had threatened them. One researcher wore a Dick Cheney mask and the other wore a Ronald Reagan mask. The person in the Reagan mask trapped and banded the crows, which is a very stressful experience. Many years later, when the Reagan mask was worn by someone new, the crows still mobbed the person, proving they could associate the face with danger and warn other crows, even those not present at the original
Yeah,
incident.
it was interesting. Not only did they mob, but they scolded that person and any of the other persons too that were wearing a Reagan mask. They would fly down, and when I say mobbed, they would fly down and peck at them.
Oh, wow. As saying, you get out of here, you dumb cough, quit bothering us.
Hmm.
But the fact that that information was retained through generations suggests a social transmission of knowledge, a kind of cultural memory. But an even more incredible example of crow intelligence is how they've adapted to city life by using cars as nutcrackers. In cities like Tokyo, crows have been observed dropping hard shell nuts into traffic intersections, waiting for the cars to roll over them, thus cracking the shells open. And this is really impressive. They time their actions with the traffic signals, waiting for the light to turn red before flying down to collect the nut meat. This shows not just problem solving, but pattern recognition, planning, and an understanding of human behavior. Crows and ravens also display a form of division of labor, particularly in tasks like acquiring food or fighting off predators. When attacking a threat like a hawk or an owl, crows will coordinate their attack. Some will distract the predator, while others swoop in and some others vocalize warnings. In a food situation, some birds may act as lookouts, while others feed, switching their roles afterward. This kind of behavior suggests an ability to cooperate and delegate roles, something rarely seen outside of primates and social insects. There's also evidence of strategic planning in groups of pairs, where one crow distracts a predator or an animal while the other snatches the food, essentially teamwork with intent.
It's interesting too. They have, as we said, a division of labor. There are certain crows whose job it is to find the food, another group that gathers the food, and part of that gathering group of people comes back and feeds the babies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
The more I'm learning about this, the more shocked I am how sophisticated these animals are.
But yeah, and you mentioned that their brain to body ratio is very high. Okay, that's one measure. In terms of actual mass, it's actually fairly small, but in terms of the effectiveness and electrical energies of the brain, crows and ravens are stunning. There, we don't understand to this day precisely how they developed that.
That's really something. So crows and ravens are much more than background wildlife. They're adaptable, brilliant, socially aware creatures. As we said, recognize and remember faces even in wearing a mask. They solve problems with tools, gift trinkets to sympathetic humans, use traffic to crack nuts, and work as a team to feed and protect their own. Their intelligence continues to challenge our preconceptions about animals, reminding us that there are other minds in the world, sharp, feathered, and watching.
Yeah, indeed. Let's focus on wolves and get some facts and some myths straightened out. They're aren't really many documented cases of wolves actively helping humans in the way we might think of dogs or dolphins doing so. Not It's not like Dances with Wolves, that movie. That does not typically happen. But there are some instances where it has happened.
Well, the famous Greek and Roman myth of Romulus and Remus. These stories are very common in folklore. The Romulus and Remus founded Rome, and they were raised and nursed by a she wolf. Um, in captivity, in research settings, socialized or hand raised wolves sometimes form bond with their human caretakers, and they can behave cooperatively. But this is not the same as wild wolves helping people in the wild. The closest example is the evolution of the domestic dog. Wolves that were more tolerant of humans likely began scavenging near human settlements thousands of years ago. Over time, this mutual tolerance led to the domesticated dog. There was a hysterically funny cartoon slash meme of a wolf coming up to a campfire saying, "I need food. What can go wrong?" And 1,000 years later, he's in someone's home with a birthday hat on.
Mm-hmm.
Domestication origins, as we say, the closest example is the evolution of the domestic dog. Documented attacks by healthy wild wolves on humans are extremely rare, especially within North America and Europe. A comprehensive review in 2002 only found a few dozen verified attacks in the 20th century, and fatal attacks are even rarer. When attacks do occur, they usually link to habituation when wolves lose their fear of people, often due to being fed. Rabid wolves, wolves with rabies that are infected, behave abnormally and aggressively. And extreme food scarcity, but it's extremely rare even then.
Yeah, basically, wolves generally fear humans and will go out of their way to avoid contact. Most sightings end with the wolf fleeing. They, as you pointed out too, they've been cast as villains in fairy tales, feared as monsters in the wild. But what if we've just simply misunderstood wolves all along? As you mentioned, Romulus and Remus, Native American traditions, okay, they're often seen as teachers or spirit guides. And there are many instances where a solitary person in, say, for example, an awakening ceremony that Native Americans use, have had wolves visit them, a singular wolf. And, they don't like approach them and lick them or anything like that, but they can help people focus on different things. Another tradition, the Norse mythology, Fenrir, the monstrous wolf that was destined to kill Odin. And this kind of was an example of both fear and power. And of course, European fairy tales like Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs portray wolves as cunning and dangerous. Now, let's do a little reality check here. Social animals. The wolves live in tight knit packs. They hunt cooperatively and raise their pups together. They do avoid humans, as I've already said. Very, very rare, very rarely is there any kind of an attack on humans. And in the case of historic attacks, it is very clear that that came from the wolf being infected with rabies. Early settlers feared them, and that led to mass extermination in the US and Europe. a real tragedy. Then there have been some rewilding efforts, like in Yellowstone National Park, which have helped restore ecosystems and shifted public opinion, even to the extent that modern conservationists highlight wolves' vital role as apex predators. When they were reintroduced to Yellowstone, it actually reshaped the rivers by changing how elk grazed. Isn't that
That,
that's fascinating?
oh, yeah, that certainly is. Scientists and wildlife biologists have long observed a remarkable relationship between wolves and ravens. Ravens, as we said, as highly intelligent birds, often act as scouts, guiding wolves to their potential kills. Once the wolves down their prey, ravens feast on the leftovers. They will actually eat together. So there's a symbiotic relationship between wolves and ravens. That's an example of what scientists call mutualism, because both species benefit from their interactions. This relationship is developed over centuries through a combination of ecological advantages and social behaviors. How did this relationship develop?
Well, probably through food sharing. You know, ravens are often seen following wolves because wolves provide an easy food source, not feeding on the wolves. But when wolves make a kill, ravens scavenge the remains, benefiting from the wolves' success. Ravens also help wolves locate prey by leading them to weakened or dead animals. Some researchers suggest ravens have even been observed harassing prey to make them more vulnerable to wolf attacks. Sort of like a scout, you know, scouting them out and harassing them, distracting them so they're not so paying attention to the wolves' attacks. And wolves are very clever with how they attack these animals. They plan it out. Over time, the wolves seem to tolerate ravens, even allowing them to peck at their kills while they eat, as we've said. Some ravens have even been seen, documented, playfully interacting with wolf pups, which also strengthens their connection. They have communication skills that transfer from generation to generation. Ravens can act as an alarm system, warning wolves of potential threats like humans, for example. Their loud calls can signal danger, helping wolves stay alert to potential risks from humans or other predators. Their relationship has likely evolved through natural selection, where both species gain survival advantages by working together over generations.
And it's not just about food. Ravens and wolves seem to engage in playful interactions, following each other, teasing, and even playing games. Some researchers believe this also was a survival strategy where both species benefit from each other's strengths.
Okay, speaking about survival, let's talk reproductions. Ravens typically lay between 3 and 7 eggs per week. And yes, they do pretty much mate for life. Once they form a pair bond, they remain together, raising their young and defending their territory.
Wolves also exhibit strong family bonds. A wolf pack is usually led by an alpha pair. This is often the only pair that breeds within the group. They typically have 4 to 6 pups a year born in the spring. And like ravens, wolves also mate for life, reinforcing the familial nature of their packs.
Throughout history, both wolves and ravens have played major roles in human myths, legends, and folklore. I mentioned the Norse mythology. Odin, the Allfather, had two ravens, Hugin and Munnin, who flew across the world to gather knowledge for him.
That's amazing. If you want an interesting podcast, friends, check out our history twist story in which Norse Vikings and Powhatan Native Americans form an alliance with each other. But wolves, and meanwhile, were both feared and revered in different societies, symbolizing strength, cunning, and sometimes the wild, visceral, and untamed aspect of nature.
The indigenous peoples, the Powhatans, yes, for sure, but others of North America have long respected and recognized the connection between wolves and ravens. Some stories tell of ravens leading wolves to food, just as they do in nature, while others speak of the trickster nature of the raven, a character who shapes the world with both mischief and wisdom.
There's a well known Native American, I think it's an Iroquois tale of a raven who befriended a lone wolf. The raven, using its extremely keen eyesight, guided the wolf to hidden sources of food, while the wolf protected the raven from other predators. This partnership ensured their mutual survival and symbolized the importance of cooperation in the natural world.
Going back to the Norse mythology, uh, ravens were seen as messengers of the gods, and wolves were revered as powerful beasts of war and wisdom. It was believed that after great battles, ravens would feast alongside wolves on the fallen, a cycle of life and death deeply woven into Viking lore. And let's not forget, as I mentioned before, the European folklore that often portrays ravens as the spirits of the dead, often warning of danger. Wolves, in contrast, were seen as guardians of the forest, ensuring balance by hunting the weak and allowing the strong to thrive. One of the most remarkable wildlife restoration stories, as I already mentioned briefly before, was when they reintroduced wolves into the ecosystem where they had been eradicated. This was at Yellowstone National Park. And there have been some others too. But at Yellowstone, when the wolves were reintroduced in 1995, the entire landscape changed. I mentioned that their return led to a veritable cascade of ecological effects, including a more balanced elk population, which allowed vegetation to recover. This, in turn, stabilized riverbanks and created habitats for other species.
What's really interesting to me, when the wolves return, the ravens follow. I'd be very curious to know, how do ravens know when wolves are introduced to a new home?
Well, that is a great question. Ravens have an incredible ability to recognize potential food sources. These birds are constantly scouting and observing changes in their environment. The moment a new predator appears, especially one as impactful as a wolf, ravens quickly associate it with hunting opportunities.
So this means within days or even hours of wolves being reintroduced to an area, ravens will start following them. It's almost as if they have an internal radar for ecological change.
The ecological impact of this partnership extends beyond just food. As scavengers, Ravens help distribute nutrients across ecosystems, breaking down carcasses and preventing the spread of disease. Meanwhile, wolves regulate prey populations, preventing overgrazing and maintaining biodiversity. So, how do wolves and ravens impact us as humans? The answer is really deeper than just their ecological role.
They help to maintain balanced ecosystems, which in turn benefits humans by keeping populations in check and reducing the spread of disease, as you said. Healthy forests and grasslands contribute to carbon sequestration, supporting the regulation of climate.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true. And let's not forget the cultural and psychological impact. Wolves and ravens, and crows to some extent, have been sources of inspiration for countless myths, books, and even modern conservation efforts. Their presence in the wild reminds us of the importance of respecting nature's delicate balance.
Absolutely. Additionally, the study of ravens' intelligence has led to a greater understanding of animal cognition, influencing fields like artificial intelligence and behavioral science. Wolves and ravens' problem solving abilities and communication skills continue to amaze researchers. Wolves and ravens also play a role in ecotourism. Many people travel to places like Yellowstone just to catch a glimpse of a wild wolf pack. This in turn boosts local economies and funds further conservation efforts.
Yeah, their impact on humans is pretty much undeniable, whether it's through maintaining healthy ecosystems, inspiring cultural narratives, advancing scientific research. These animals remind us that we too are part of nature's interconnected web. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the trio, singing trio, the wild world of wolves, ravens, and crows. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, please, and leave a review. We'd love to hear from you.
We really would, folks. We welcome comments, suggestions. We love what we do. It takes effort, but it's worth it. So if you have a story or question about nature's unique relationship, please send a message. Until our next podcast, keep exploring, keep wondering, and stay wild. Goodbye, friends.